Midday Treat with NAZ Elite, a monthly podcast in which I chat with HOKA NAZ Elite team members, and you'll get a behind-the-scenes scoop on their training, racing, and everyday lives. I'm your host, Eric Senseman. You can find our monthly podcast on SoundCloud by searching HOKA NAZ Elite, and you can learn more about the faces behind the team by visiting their website, nazelite.com, their Facebook page, Northern Arizona Elite, or their Instagram and Twitter, both at NAZ_Elite. On this episode, I sit down with NAZ Elite's head coach, Ben Rosario. Ben and I talk all things Boston Marathon since the race is coming up on Monday. We talk about Ben's experiences at the race. We discuss how that's informed his training plans for two of his athletes, Scott Smith and Kellen Taylor, who are running the race on Monday. And then we talk about the course, the fields, the tactics, how to prepare for all those things. So largely, yeah, just a big Boston Marathon episode. And we compare Boston to some other races. So for all those Boston Marathons fans out there, sit back and enjoy. So I'm here with Coach Ben Rosario for this month's podcast. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. We're in the podcast studio, which happens to be in my back room. So
that's right.
It was pretty easy for me to walk basically straight from a nap over into this room, and now we're doing the podcast.
Not a long commute.
It's very
not a long commute.
Very,
I can see where
very
you started,
convenient
actually,
for me.
Yeah, that works. So Boston Monday is a few days away now. So we're going to talk about Boston.
Let's do it.
What's your history with Boston in terms of participating, being there?
Good question. Well, Boston is one of the first marathons I remember watching on television. Technically, the very first running event I remember watching on television when I was a little kid was the New York City Marathon on NBC in my parents' bedroom. I remember, for whatever reason, just sits with me vividly. But of course I remember watching Boston as well. Particularly I remember Cosmas Dedi from Kenya winning 3 times in a row. I remember watching those races. I was a sports nut. Like whenever sports was on TV I would watch.
Sure.
But I did find myself enamored with running for whatever reason, really early on, even before I ran on any kind of team or anything like that.
Sure. So what years was that 3-year span?
That was the early 90s.
Early 90s.
Yeah,
okay.
So I'd been like 10, 11, 12, right in that range, 13.
But you weren't running too much?
No, I didn't really start doing it. I mean, certainly not when I was 10. I remember I started running maybe like, 12 or so, middle school, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. But I had already watched some stuff on TV, and so I knew I liked it. But anyway, Boston always seemed like what it is, which is this huge deal.
Yep.
So of course I'd always wanted to do it like everybody. I didn't run it myself until 2007 in, let's see, what would have been the year leading into the Olympic trials that year, which were in the fall of 07 in New York City. So actually I had run, my marathon career started to really take a dive after 2006. I had opened a running store in St. Louis, and I was just, my time was very limited, and I was struggling to get all the training in and do all the work. And I went to Boston, and I was kind of ill-prepared in terms of my body. I was just tired.
Sure.
I worked an expo in St. Louis on Saturday, and then flew to Boston on Sunday, and then, or Friday I worked the expo in St. Louis, and then flew to Boston on Saturday, and tried to race on Monday. It was just, it was a mess. I did bad. I did really, really bad. But at least I got to see the course and experience it. Now, that was the year that was, if you're a Boston fan, that was the year that was the nor'easter.
Yes.
So it was really nasty. Although, to be fair, look at my wonderful assistant here has come with a Scott Fauble coffee mug. Look at that.
Coffee here.
Look
at
that.
Cheers now.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. If you're listening, you'll just have to imagine this wonderful Scott Fauble coffee mug.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, you can available now on NAZelite.com. So, that was my first experience running it, was 07, and it didn't go well. I ran, I think, 2:35 or something after basically walking the last few miles.
My next question was going to be, and we're going to get into this, Kellen, Taylor, and Scott Smith are running. My next question was going to do you think Kellen's going to beat your Boston time?
Yeah,
it sounds like she is.
By 10 minutes, yeah.
We'll get into that.
That's not really a question. So what else? So then I ran it again. The only time I've run a marathon, quote unquote, for fun.
Yeah.
Because I ran the Olympic trials in 07, and that also went poorly, and then I said, okay, no more marathons, I'm done with this. And I didn't run another marathon or think about running another marathon until 2013, which of course, unfortunately, was the Boston bombing year.
Yes.
But I ran it that year with Greg McMillan and his staff. I was doing some marketing for Greg at the time, and we just did it for fun. And it was fun. It was fun. Again, I struggled the last several miles. I did find a $20 bill on the ground.
Did you?
I already started walking, which I think helped me find it. This is like 23 miles in or something.
That's probably the most money you ever made from marathon.
Well, I remember. No, that's not true. But I remember somebody in the crowd totally seeing me do it, and I just looked at him like, well, I mean, what are you gonna do?
I'm on the course.
You're not gonna not pick it up. Yeah. So I made $20. Yeah,
that's pretty great.
I think I walked across the line in about 3:05 or 3:08, something like that. But I got a neat experience because I was definitely with, the crowd, which was awesome.
Sure.
At Boston, in a lot of races, that sort of 240 to 310 group is kind of no man's land.
Right.
But in Boston, it's packed.
Yeah.
So there was tons of people. I did run 6-minute pace for a while, but that was a mistake. I remember a guy in jean shorts passing me, and I was like, uh-oh, this is not going well. But, no, it was super fun, and that taught me a lot, too, because of how I felt afterward.
Sure.
The biggest lesson I ever got at Boston was that year, and it wasn't really from my own self, but it was from a guy I was still coaching, Adam McDowell, who I had coached in St. Louis.
Yeah.
He had run 2:17 at the trials in 2012, and we thought that was maybe going to be it for him, but he's like, I'll keep going. He moved to Louisiana, and he said, well, I want to do Boston. I've always wanted to do Boston.
Yeah.
And when we started that segment, I did want to incorporate more downhill training.
Sure.
But very early on in the segment, he strained his hamstring a little bit, and we had been doing a little downhill thing when he did it, and I was like, we better not do that. So we just kind of scrapped all that downhill stuff I had planned, and he was in incredible shape, definitely better than the trials. And he was a guy like we would know exactly what he was going to run. We trained to run 2:19 or just under 2:19 when he was trying to qualify for the trials, and he ran 2:18.50 or whatever it was. And then at the trials, we thought he could run 2:17.30, and he ran 2:17.27. So, I mean, we were dialed in. And I thought he would be, 2:16.
Right.
And he came across halfway, like everybody in Boston, or like so many people of
107.
all ability levels. No, came across fine.
Okay.
And then the hills got him.
Yeah.
The downhills. Like his quad, he's like, Ben, I wasn't even tired, but my quads were just so shot. You go down this big hill from 15 to 16,
right,
and that's where a lot of people's race just ends, basically, because then you have to start going up, and you've got nothing left. And so, obviously, I'm sure you're going to ask me about that, but that was a defining moment in my understanding of how to train for the Boston Marathon. Now, I haven't been able to put that into practice until now, because for a variety of reasons, we haven't had somebody do it till now.
Yeah.
But with Scott and Kellen, they were really ready. I think they were at the right point in their careers to do it. And so here we are.
And so what year was it when you coached? That
was 13 as well. I was running for fun,
but
of course he was running seriously. And he ended up 220 or something, which was a bummer because he was in way better shape than that. But that's what everybody says, and that's what I learned. Right. So
it's about more than just fitness.
It's about way more than just fitness. Yeah, it's really about specificity.
So I suppose we could just start jumping in then.
Sure.
Start talking about more specifics there. So you've got Steph Bruce running London in 2 weeks' time.
Correct.
13 days, I guess. Now.
Yeah.
And then you've got Scott and Kellen running Boston this upcoming weekend. So or Monday. Look at those two. Those are very different courses.
Yes.
Right. So how much of that training overlaps, and how much of that is different?
Yeah, and of course, Aaron Braun ran Rotterdam this past weekend.
That's true.
And you didn't ask me, and that's nice of you, but it didn't go well. He didn't finish, and I'm really sorry for Aaron, of course, and we're trying to figure that out. And his training went really well. Also, there were some things outside of training that maybe were the variables that could have caused this.
Sure.
But we don't know, so there's not much I can say, except that it definitely was something weird and something that was a huge outlier, because he started getting super tired at 15K, 20K, which is just way early.
Yeah.
And it's not like he went out over his head or anything. So anyway, we'll figure that out. But his training and Steph's training were definitely very different, because Rotterdam and London are very flat. You know, it's really, unless you're trying to win the race, which of course we'd love to be trying to do, but for those two, realistically, it was more so, hey, let's try to be in the top 10.
Right.
And so it's really more about finding your pace and your rhythm and just running it the whole time.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the workouts were just same pace the whole time, or, you know, they were flat. You know, we were purposely trying to find flat courses to train on, because the races are very flat, and that in and of itself is a little bit of a challenge, or can be, because if you live in a hilly town and then you go run the Chicago Marathon, you're not used to running 26 miles where your stride is the same every single step for 26 miles.
So there's always specificity.
There's specificity.
This is very specific,
it's just Boston
is
particularly unique.
Yes.
But yeah, so anyway, the point is, yes, Aaron and Steph trained for their specific course and demands, and then what they're going to face, and then Scott and Kellen trained for their demands, which are multifaceted, because you have the downhills. Right. You know, the race has a lot of downhill early, really early, and then a huge downhill out of nowhere at 15, which is really weird and different. Yeah. And then, of course, right after that, you have to go uphill, net uphill for the next 4 miles.
Sure.
Or 5 miles. And that's kind of weird and different. And then you go downhill again to the finish.
Well, I was going to say, you got to have wheels after all
But
that.
then beyond that, you know, they've put themselves in a place where they can run in the lead pack, which means it's not going to be mile after mile of the same effort and the same rhythm. There's going to be pace change. There's going to be surges. It could be slow and tactical. You don't know, because there's no rabbits. Yep. So you have to kind of be, when you step to the line in Boston, if you're of their caliber. Now we'll talk about everybody too, because everybody has to be ready for the hills and such. But if you're their caliber and you're going to be in the lead pack, you have to be ready for a race that goes out hard from the gun, which could happen. A race that goes really slow and then picks up, which could happen. Or kind of your normal Boston, where it's sort of a lead pack and people throw in a surge and test everybody, and then it kind of settles back down, and then it goes again, and then it goes again, and it just kind of goes like that until there's finally one move, usually in the Newton Hills, that completely breaks it up. Yep. And then, you know, you got to be super tough, and you got to be able to close over those last 4 miles, 5 miles, once you get over Heartbreak Hill. So, yeah, that's what we've tried to do, is prepare them for all of those things, which is no easy task, but it's fun though. I would say that they've really enjoyed it, speaking for them here, because, and they've said this, because it's been different. They've both been through a lot of marathon segments with us that are more like what Aaron and Steph just did, and this one was different, had different terrain, you know, different places that we ran, and the workouts were a little different. They're the same general philosophy, but you know, some differences that we can get into, and I think they really responded to that very well.
Sure. And did you, in preparing them for Boston here, you obviously had your own experience as a runner. You also had one experience coaching somebody. Was it more difficult for you as a coach to build this plan? Did it require more research, so to speak, or more thought?
I mean, I'd like to think I always research a lot, but it was fun for me too. I guess that's how I would describe it. It was fun because I started months and months and months ago, just kind of writing the outline and then letting it sit for a little bit and then tweaking it again. And I watched a lot of the old Boston marathons, and you know, kind of scouted out. I scouted out places to run here in Flag a long time ago as well, so that I didn't want to be the week of, like, trying to find somewhere, you know. So I mean, before the segment even started, I had located a couple spots that I thought would be perfect for us to do some new things, and yeah, so it was a challenge mentally for me, but stimulating in the same way that it was for them, because of the newness of it.
Right. So let's go back then to you can sort of generalize preparing for Boston, like you said, for sort of everyone. Yeah. The hills are obviously a big factor there. I know one workout, because I talked with Scott, that you did was a long run. It might have even been 26 miles, where you started up Snowball Road. Yeah. So you started with a big downhill. Yep. For those that aren't familiar, it's, what do you lose there? 300, 200 feet a mile coming down from where
where we came from? Oh, probably.
Something like that?
Probably, because we started at the 4 mile mark. 4 to 1 is really downhill, and then 1 to the start of Snowball is a little more gradual. But it's similar to Boston in that sense, because you lose a lot in the first couple of miles, and then it kind of isn't as crazy.
Right.
But a lot of that loss is right away.
Yeah.
And so, but the idea there, and we did this with a couple other places too, was that it's actually more dynamic than Boston. Right?
Oh, okay,
you know what I'm saying?
Sure,
like,
yeah.
So we'd like to, and the thing, from a philosophy standpoint, from the very beginning, what I was telling them is we're not going to do all these downhill workouts so that you can survive the downhills.
Right.
We're doing them so you can thrive on the downhills.
Sure.
We're doing them so because theoretically, I mean, and we can talk about the weather, but let's say, all things being equal, you had a nice day, you should be able to run a PR at Boston. It's downhill, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You should be able to.
That's a good point.
You know, so that's what we were trying to instill, was that idea that, hey, we're trying to be prepared so that we can actually run faster than we would on Rotterdam or London or Chicago.
Well, and I think,
etc.
well, Ryan Hall's performance would reinforce what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think there was a tailwind that year, but still.
Yeah, absolutely.
PR. Yeah,
absolutely. And a lot of people have their PRs at Boston. You know, if you're properly prepared. So, Bob Kempinen, great marathoner in the '90s. You know, he ran his famous 2:08 there, and I think that was a tailwind year too. You know, that helps. But you know, it could be a tailwind. That's what I'm saying.
Right,
you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared for that really fast day too. And so, yeah, that snowball workout was one. I wrote a blog on Final Surge, a partner of ours, called 10 Weeks to Boston, which you can check out. I think it's just finalsurge.com/10 Weeks to Boston. But every week, I wrote an update on what Scott and Kellen did the week prior, and then kind of gave anybody reading some tips if they were training for Boston, some things they could throw into their training for the week, you know, that would fit in, that would help prepare them for the course as well. And those are the kind of things I was writing constantly was, you know, hey, on this one, find a course that, you know, has a bit of a net downhill for the first part, then maybe has some uphills later on in the run, and then hopefully, if you can find it, you know, if it can work out, it finishes a little bit downhill as well, because that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll get that Final Surge link in the notes for those listening, so you can check that out. Before we talk a little more specifically about Scott and Kellen, since they are your athletes and they are running Boston, in terms of tactics, you got into this a little bit. How the Boston plays out up front. I think an interesting question, just by way of contrast, is to ask. Do you anticipate Boston, and historically has Boston been different from other, you know, U.S. majors like Chicago or New York? Or do they all kind of have their unique ways in which they play out, unique tactics that are employed because of the particular course?
Well, I mean, it's most similar to New York historically because neither has ever had rabbits. So there's always that kind of unknown factor, and the surging and different things like that.
Right.
Now Chicago recently has done away with their rabbits, but Chicago is still flat. So there's still a little bit less. It's still a bit more predictable, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Than Boston. Boston's very unpredictable. Plus the weather, which I think is historically something you have to talk about, because it can be anything from pouring down rain and a headwind and freezing to 80+ degrees. Yeah. And it's been that, and it's been everything in between. Yeah. There's oftentimes a headwind. You know, it can just be anything. Yeah. So because of that, it's very, very the only predictable thing is that it's unpredictable.
Right.
Yeah, so I think when you study the times, you realize that, you know, if you're kind of a stat geek, the race on the men's side is going to be won in 2:09 or 2:10.
Yeah, right.
Usually.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a very nice day, they can get into the 2:08, 2:07. That 2:03 year when Ryan ran 2:04, that's a total outlier. That's one time.
Right.
So almost every time it's going to be 2:09, 2:10.
Fourth, third, what was he?
Ryan, when he ran 2:04.58, was fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy.
But yeah.
And then on the women's side, recently it's trending a little quicker, but more often than not in the past, it's more around, you know, 2:25. Now, they've been going under that. And who knows, maybe it's because, you know, women are smaller.
Sure.
And they can handle the downhills a little bit better. When they're running downhill, it's not pounding. They're not taking quite the pounding that a 125 to 150 pound person is.
That's right.
They're taking the pounding of a 95 to 110 pound person.
Right.
So it's just... Right? That's just obvious. So maybe that's why they run a little bit faster comparatively. Or maybe they're just tougher and they just don't care and they just get out and push it harder than the guys. I don't know. But anyway, That's the big difference historically, is that you don't see the times up front that you see at London and Berlin and Chicago historically, that you and that you see at the other marathons like Rotterdam and everything like that, because it's just it's an equalizer. I guess I would say the course is an equalizer, because of the way it's set up. Very few people can just be prepared for that, especially your first time out.
Right.
So hopefully Scott and Kellen are benefiting from my poor results, and they'll run better, much comparatively better than I did.
So would you just say, last thing in terms of tactics in the course, like 2014 with Meb, that was an outlier. Him getting away as early as he did.
Sure.
What makes it so difficult to get away early?
Well, it's difficult to get away in any race.
Well, that's true.
You know, but I think what happened to him that year was it was a sort of perfect storm.
Sure.
Because he hadn't, I mean, I think he had run well, but in the eyes of the international athletes, he hadn't really done anything in a while that they would respect.
Yeah.
Which allowed him to get away. If it was someone that they respected, they wouldn't have let that person get away.
That's a good point.
So that was one thing that helped him. The other thing was he knew the course really well. So if anybody was going to get away and be able to control their emotions, it was going to be him. Not only because he knew the course, but also because he's just such a veteran.
Sure.
He just knows himself.
Yeah.
He was the perfect person to do it.
Right.
You know, for one. And then they let him go way too long, for two. And then the course helped him out a lot, because they actually, and I say they, I'm talking about Wilson Chibet and a couple of the other international athletes, made a great move through the Newton Hills. I mean, Chibet absolutely rolled the Newton Hills, and really, especially from like 25K to 30K, his split, I think, was ridiculous, and 30 to 35K was still really fast. That whole 10K was fast, but then he got to 35K, and he was just toast.
He was smoked.
He was toast, because if you think about the section that he had to just bash to make up that ground, it's really hard.
Right.
And Meb didn't have to crush that section. His section. He just had to keep basically running the same effort that he'd been running the whole time.
Sure.
And so when it got down to the end, Wilson was actually hurting more than Meb was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was an interesting year.
No, that's but you learned from that year.
Yeah.
You learned from that year, I think, for sure. You learn that, you know, if you had your choice, that's how you would run it. Is still pretty even effort. So it's no different than any other race in that. Now, the splits won't be all the same.
Sure.
But you'd love to run it even effort, but, you know, just most people aren't going to get that opportunity.
Right.
If somebody tries that again, I just don't think that's going to work.
Yeah. It's too fresh.
Yeah, they're just not going to let somebody do that. So I don't see that happening on either side.
Sure.
Year, yeah.
Well then, so again, moving towards Scott and Kellen in particular, I guess how they do is in part contingent on the fields, on who else is running. So how do you feel about the fields this year, and I guess how that plays?
The fields are awesome. I mean, the BAA has done an amazing job. The John Hancock group, MK Shea and her team that puts the fields together, they did a great job, because they put together what I would call a very intriguing field. Wonderful international field on both sides. Really good athletes. Obviously, Karui is back, the defending champ. That's always nice. Buzanesh Deba on the women's side, Daska on the women's side, people who are really, really good. Edna Kiplagat is defending champ. So both defending champs are back, and Kiplagat's one of the best female marathoners of all time. So the international field is very, very solid, which I think is important, because you don't want to like stack it unfairly toward the Americans or something just because it's an American marathon. You have to have them earn it. And they've got the American field, which is incredible on the women's side and very, very good on the men's side as well. So that piques the interest of the American fan. And then, of course, they always do a good job, in addition to the East African athletes, of getting a guy like Yuki Kauchi on the Japanese, from the Japanese side, and he's a fan favorite in Japan, but also across the globe. And so there's a nice mix of people from all over the world. It has a very, very good international flavor, plenty of good storylines, really interesting characters on both sides. You know, people that people love, and then people that maybe have some haters, and that's okay. That's cool too.
Yeah,
it makes it a real sporting event. So I love the fields. Are you asking how the fields are for us in particular, or just in general?
Yeah, no, general. That was a good overview. You obviously know the fields better than I do, and better than most listeners, I'm sure. Yes. Do you think that? I suppose one way to ask the question is, put Scott in this field this year versus, a field 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Relative to other years, do you feel like this is a good year to have Scott and Kellen in the race in terms of their strengths?
Yeah, I think it is. Well, first of all, it just seems like there's more buzz this year than other years, and I think that's great because that benefits everyone.
Sure.
It's more eyeballs, and I think those two especially, they're pros and they're veterans and they're good at not letting that overwhelm them. In fact, using it to their advantage.
Right.
Kellen having run so well in New York City and having had the London experience and the trials experience, so she's had plenty of big races, you know. And Scott running so well in Frankfurt last fall. It's just, I think I mentioned this at the very top, but I can delve into it more. But it was the perfect time for each of them in their careers.
Okay.
I think if you try Boston too early, your legs may not be calloused enough. They may not have enough lifetime miles on them. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think for those two, this is the right time.
Okay.
And then they have experience, like I said, in all the big events, so that's not going to be a problem.
Sure.
And then I think they're to the point where they've been through enough marathon segments that they were able to then push the envelope this time.
Right.
Because I think in Boston, you almost need to be ready to race 30 miles.
Uh-huh.
And so we were able to run 130 miles a week during the bulk of their marathon-specific segment, as opposed to 120 or 115 in the past, like they've done. This is definitely far and away the most miles they've done. And that doesn't mean everything, but the fact that they were able to handle that is really promising for their chances. Yeah, right.
Well, that you sort of preempted a question I was going to ask, which is why choose Scott and Kellen? Like, what among...
Well, there's other things, too.
Yeah,
So let me tell you this. So Scott and Kellen both already liked downhills.
Okay.
It's not like we had to teach them to like downhills or teach them how to run downhills. Now, we had to work on it and perfect it, but they were already naturally good at it and enjoyed it. Scott is very compact. He's a very smooth and efficient runner. He lands kind of up on his midfoot, which is, I think, much better for downhill running than somebody who's, let's say, a heel striker, which I don't think is a death sentence by any means, but it's not great for downhill running.
Right.
And so he already has a good form, and it suits downhill running well. When you watch Kellen run, it doesn't scream downhill runner per se, but she's really good at them. And she's really strong muscles, tendons, ligaments, and so she can handle the pounding better than most. So it was just, they were the two obvious choices.
Sure.
Now, I think there's other people on the team that will have success in Boston in the future. Yeah. But I think right now it's kind of another perfect storm.
Right.
Everything is coming together at the right time.
Right. I'll be interested to see, well, it's too far down the line. I'll just be interested to see when that plays out for others on the team.
Yeah, well, hopefully these guys can set the bar pretty high. And
get things started. Yeah, that's fair. So if things were to go extremely well for both of them, what's more important to you and to them in terms of goals? Is it being top 5 versus running 224 for Kellen? Say?
For sure the place.
For sure the place.
I mean, 100% the place. That's Boston.
Yeah.
We've not talked about time much at all. The whole segment. And even tomorrow or Thursday when I talk about the race plan with them, I don't know that we'll talk time very much. Yeah, the whole idea was to get fit enough that you could run with the lead pack.
Okay.
And then you just bury yourself in that lead pack. As much as we want to be on TV and get the HOKA singlet, front and center.
I can see that being important.
We'd much rather have that much later.
Yes.
So if we're kind of hiding early on, I think that'll be a good thing. I think they are ready to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. Kellen was in 4th place 22 miles into New York. So I don't think it's crazy to think that she could be in the top 5 that late into the Boston Marathon as well.
Yep.
Now, we'll see how things shake out. But yeah, the idea is certainly place.
Okay.
And it's... A lot of it is going to be them making big decisions on the fly.
That's true.
Really difficult decisions on the fly. I mean, there could be a Meb that tries to run away from everybody. And you know, in that scenario, Scott would have to make the same choice that everybody else made in 2014. For better or worse, he'll have to say, well, do I stay with the pack or do I also go? You know,
right.
You know, he would probably stay with the pack. I mean, the odds would tell you that the winner is going to come from the critical mass.
Correct.
You know, if you remember that same year that you had discussed when Ryan ran so fast, Kim Smith had also made a break early on the women's side, and they had let her go as well. The Providence grad who retired a couple years ago, but great runner. And Des was in the pack with Kara and, you know, of course, a ton of international athletes, and they let Kim go, and they eventually did catch her. Yeah. She cramped up in the Newton Hills or had a problem with her leg, shin maybe, and they caught her around 17 or 18 miles. And then eventually that was the year Des got second. Right. So usually that's more likely to have sort of like a cycling race where the peloton usually catches. So we want to be part of the peloton.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And from your perspective, since I am interviewing you, we should talk about you at least a little bit more. What's that like as a coach? Is that a pretty easy course? Like, are there any situations? So Frankfurt, for example, I know you were able to be on course at times. Yeah, you were able to, you know, yell at them to run faster.
Run
whatever
faster.
You yell.
Run faster.
If I were a coach, that's
Well, you see the high school coaches like just screaming, and I'm just like, I don't think that gets a whole lot done. No, I try to be somewhat, you know, positive and calm and confident.
Yeah. So, do you have opportunities because it's such a loud course and there's so many people? And I mean, do you have opportunities to get
not really at Boston? Not really at Boston because it's too tough because it's point to point. Right. And you want to get back to the finish. I could take the tee out to 17, but I'm not confident that I would get back in time. Okay. And I want to be watching. And the truth is, and I think you were just saying this, they're not going to hear you. Right. Because there's too many people out there. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll just, you know, it's in their hands.
so it becomes a pretty...
I'm just a spectator like everybody else once the gun goes off.
Okay, yeah. Stressful day, but...
It's stressful in there. Yeah, it's stressful. You usually, you know... The races usually do a good job of putting us up, the coaches and agents, in a room where we can watch on a TV and a big screen. And man, when they're doing really well, it's quite nerve-wracking. Like Kellen at New York and Steph at New York. Yeah, absolutely. That was really fun, watching their names like scroll across the screen and everything. And I mean, I'll be very... my stomach will be in knots internally, but no, it'll be fun. I hope to be able to watch it with Josh Cox, their agent, and then I know their family members are coming, and I know their families after having, you know, hung out with them at different races over the years. They were with us from the beginning. So this is, I mean, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. This is the 5th year with both of them. So yeah, I know them very well, and it's maybe that makes it even more special. So.
Yeah, definitely. So maybe we'll kind of wrap things up just talking about these last couple days leading up here. Sure. I have seen on social media a number of people, coaches in particular, commenting on the last couple weeks before a marathon. Sure. Yeah. I don't know why that has happened.
Well, I think it's because they get a lot of questions this time of year.
Yeah, I guess
that's why I did. Yeah. I mean, in that blog on Final Surge, I wrote about it last week. Okay. That was kind of my topic last week. And, you know, my thinking is this. First of all, and I said this in the thing as kind of a disclaimer, I'm not saying I'm 100% right, and I'm not saying that every situation is the same, because it's not. Right. You know, you could have had a setback in your training, or you could have started late, and maybe you don't need too much of a taper, quote unquote, if you want to call it that, or a peak phase, whatever you want to call it. Just call it taper for now, because that's the easiest to do. Maybe you just need to go all the way up to the end, you know? And maybe there are runners that don't respond well to backing off. I'm sure that's possible, and I know it's possible because I've seen people do well. Yeah. But for me, it's a math game, right? So, you know, I'm analyzing what I know, analyzing what I've seen, and trying to make the best choice for the athletes to put them in the best position, basis, you know, to perform well. And for us, we've always done well, especially lately, because it seems like outside of Aaron last week, which I said was an outlier, we've been performing really well on the day. And not only performing, but feeling good on the day. Yeah, right. And what we've done is train really hard all the way up to 2 weeks out. We've structured it and spaced it out so that we're not dying at the end of the segment and, you know, basically begging for it to be done.
Right.
We're feeling good. Even that period from 3 weeks out to 2 weeks out was arguably our hardest week. You know, so we're building, and then we back off. We take that day off right after that last workout 2 weeks out. And that's just recharge. I don't think a day off is so terrible. They'll probably feel a little rusty the next day, but then they start feeling really good. We still run at the same pace that we always run at. We still do a couple of workouts like we would always do, and they're not way different. They're just less volume. We just pull back the volume. So the way I explained it in the blog was, you know, they're used to running 10 or 12 miles every morning, so those become 8. You know, they're used to running 6 miles every afternoon. Those become 4. Or maybe a couple afternoons we don't run. They're used to doing workouts that are 12 to 16 miles in total volume. We cut that almost in half, 8 miles, you know, maybe 6 miles the week of. But it's still a workout, you know? And
it's so the same process.
It's the same rhythm. They stay in the same rhythm. And then, of course, the last couple of days are just very easy, you know? And they usually feel really good. And I think the marathon is different. We actually don't do that for almost any other distance. But the marathon, because of the glycogen storage factor, you really need to be fresh and ready to go, I think, to last the whole time and have the energy stores you need over the last 10K, 5K.
Well, that's just proven.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I don't think that's a topic of debate. Although maybe.
And so when I'm, you know, whether it's the pro athletes or whether it's absolutely anyone running Boston or any other race, that's kind of how I suggest to do the taper. Take what you've been doing for the last several weeks and just shave the volume down, but don't shave anything else. Not the pace, not the type of workouts. Don't all of a sudden go out and run a set of hard quarters if you've been doing a bunch of marathon specific stuff. Do another marathon specific work, but just do a little, you know, just a little less volume. Don't eat super differently or differently at all, really. Don't sleep different. I mean, just live the same life you've been living.
Well, especially if you've been performing well in training, right? It's like obviously whatever you've been doing.
I'm kind of making the assumption that it's been a good segment. You know, obviously I can't address every single different scenario. But yeah, if things have been going well and you've kind of got it down, then it shouldn't be way different. It should just be more the same, but less of it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So you guys will get up there.
They go. I think they leave Thursday. The athletes. I get up there on Friday because we have Matt Yano and Scott Falbo running the 5K on Saturday.
Oh, that's right.
And then they have some media obligations on Friday and Saturday, but then nothing on Sunday. They'll be able to relax all day, and then the race on Monday. Not that anyone cares what I'm doing, but then I'll stay a couple days. I'll stay a couple days and then go to London.
From New York.
Yeah.
Okay. Or from Boston, rather. Yeah.
Correct.
Got it. And last question, because now I'm curious. I feel like I keep trying to wrap things up.
And that's all right. We can.
And then you say something, and I think I want to follow up on that. So they'll get there Thursday, which would be for roughly 4 days before. They're coming from 7,000 feet to sea level. Is that something you think too much about or worry too much about?
We used to, I should say, but I don't know. I think lately I just think that it's not that big of a deal. That's the same time that Kellen went down before New York, and anecdotally she felt like $1 million. You know? So I don't think it's a problem. I think when you're fit, and I think, speaking of anecdotally, all that evidence that says, you know, because you hear that, 4 to 10 days you feel sluggish. But that's just anecdotal. That's not proven. That's just people saying I felt sluggish. But I'll counter and say that Kellen didn't feel sluggish. So it must not be universal. And I just don't think. And again, Meb's done it, and Nick Arciniaga, who has had great Boston marathons coming from Flagstaff on that same day. I just don't buy it. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll feel fantastic.
So it's more just about being comfortable, showing up with
and actually, to be honest, I like it because it's tough for us this time of year because we're Pacific Coast time right now. It's tough for us to go to the East Coast and race.
3 hours.
So 3 hours is pretty significant. So actually, it's nice because they probably won't sleep all that great Thursday, but then they'll sleep better Friday and really well on Saturday.
Which is what you want.
That's what you want. So I think it's probably for the best that they go on Thursday.
All right, Ben. Well, this will be your 3rd time at Boston then?
Oh, well, I've also watched a few times.
In person.
In person. So
Okay.
I don't know exactly what number it is, but it'll be my favorite.
It'll be your favorite.
I'm predicting that, right? And that's my only prediction. I'm not going to predict how they're going to do, but I'm going to predict
That'll
that
be
it's
your
going to be
prediction.
my favorite.
I like that.
No, they're going to do fantastic, and I think it's going to be a really good day. The weather, if you're running Boston and watching this and looking for any tips yourself, looks cool. Possible rain, possible wind, but like we said at the top, that's kind of, you should have known that from the get-go,
Right.
that was a possibility. And I wouldn't stress too much about looking at it every day. I would wait till you're going to leave and look at what it's going to be, you know, pack some rain stuff. And, you know, obviously, you know, logistically, if you're in the regular mask start, you have to stay in Hopkinton for quite a while,
yeah,
which is kind of a bummer. But you know, that's kind of part of the experience, though.
It is.
So if it looks like rain, make sure you get your poncho and all that good stuff.
And I believe they donate anything that
you
you throw out. So,
yeah. Wear old clothes.
Right.
Wear you know, get a trash bag or a poncho. You know, wear old sweats, whatever it is, and you can toss all that stuff, and they'll donate it to the Goodwill or locally, or the various organizations that will dole those out to the less fortunate. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. If you've been listening to this and you're saying, "Oh man, I didn't train for the downhills," well, it's probably too late now. So
don't try to cram it in.
You just have to deal with it. No, you know, just enjoy it. Just enjoy Boston. And honestly, I want Scott and Kellen to enjoy it.
Yeah, right.
You know, I think they've earned the right to enjoy it, and you should enjoy, even at their level, the experience, because it's one of a kind.
Yeah,
it's very, very cool.
It is indeed. It'll be exciting to see how they do.
Thanks, man.
That is for sure.
All right.
So thanks for watching, listening, however you consumed this, and we will see you next time. All right. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Shake hands.
Yeah.
Buzzer off.